going to go ahead and get started. So welcome. Thank you everybody for joining today. So excited to have Catherine here with me to talk about this. I feel like this is a hot topic and definitely one that we're talking about as it relates to hiring. So I'm Katy. I'm the founder of HigherPeople. We are a recruiting agency that helps pre-seed to Series B startups. And we're making a ton of hires across sales and engineering and customer success. And we try to do a ton of events to help job seekers land more jobs. We know the market can be really difficult, and we know that right now it can be particularly hard to stand out, which is why we're doing this event today. We really want to talk about creator skills, putting out content, and how content can actually help you get hired. And also just kind of some low-hanging ways to be able to get started without, I guess, being afraid to jump in or feeling like it's this humongous task to take on. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Catherine to introduce herself and give a little bit of context on the Bedford side in terms of why we're here today together.
Hi there. I'm sorry, I had a little bit of technical difficulties hearing you at the beginning, Katy, but so nice to be here with you today. Obviously, I'm here on behalf of Bedford Learning and excited to chat with everybody in terms of all the things that we can learn about if content can get you hired. So Bedford is a new startup that just launched to help professionals build out creator skills to help them be more relevant in the workplace, really build out the right persona for themselves and be out in the public eye just to really have their professional point of view and reach their audience that they want to reach as they become professionals. So really excited to chat with you today, Katy.
Awesome. Well, we're going to dive right in. I think the biggest thing is like this idea of creator skills, and kind of we're in this creator economy now where, you know, it's expected to post on all these different mediums. There's LinkedIn, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's Facebook. It can feel super overwhelming. So I guess, can you just like give me a lay of the land of like, what are creator skills and like, what's it mean to like be good at content? Like, do you have to post on everything? Like, are you picking one medium? Like, tell me more about just like this idea of the creator economy and what it even means.
Yeah, so I guess if you were to mention creators in the context of how we're talking about them today, 10 years ago, this is not how we'd be talking about content creators. Now the creator economy has evolved into every single person themselves as a creator. And it used to be, you had to be famous on YouTube and on X and all these different platforms to really be considered a content creator. I used to run creator partnerships at Twitter for many years, and that really was working with people that were using social media as like their means of their entire career. But now everyday people are content creators. So that is just trickling down into so many different people, into different professionals, looking at social media as a way to get their point of view out there, really thinking about it as a way to expand themselves outside of their personal networks into professional networks. So when you ask about like the different platforms that should be used, it really depends. And what we'll be talking about a lot today is like the goals of why this content creation is happening and why creators are being active out there. So not to like jump too far ahead, but it really just depends on what the goals are of each creator and really helps figure out which platforms to be on. And yeah, I mean, there's so many millions of creators, the people that self-identify as creators, but then they also have their own careers as well. So it really can be segmented into so many different types of people and creators out there.
Love it. And are we striving for like a certain follower count, or like, is there like what good looks like, or is it just about like posting and putting yourself out there for the goals? Like I think 20,000 or so followers for LinkedIn, which for me feels pretty good, but I don't know. Is that good? Or what should we be striving for?
Yes. It's kind of a good lobby up question because there aren't any right benchmarks, right? Like if for you to say that 20,000 on LinkedIn is very good for you, you're not wrong in saying that, because your goals are to be on LinkedIn and to be very active and to expand your network and be a thought leader on LinkedIn. So that's really good. Follower count doesn't matter anymore. You know, it used to be the days of the more followers, the better. People took you more seriously in that capacity if you had a large following. engagement rate and really think about like who is following you and it's the right people that you're trying to go after that are following you and engaging with your content is the metric that you should be striving for. So thinking about, are people actually commenting on my content? Are they watching it to the entire video? Or are they just scrolling past it? That's not great engagement if they're not actually engaging with it. So really thinking about how people are interacting with your content rather than just trying to amass that large following number.
Cool. Love it. And now I guess like let's segue into the job kind of market. Maybe a little bit of like information on my end is, the market right now is as we know, it's hyper competitive. And with AI, we're also just like being swarmed by applications. So when we post a role, we're often seeing, 300 resumes in an ATS within 24 hours. Sometimes more, sometimes less. But as we think about kind of how to stand out, I've seen that like the people who know how to build a brand or leverage their network or, really be thoughtful and kind of coming off as a thought leader in this space can obviously make a difference. However, I also know it can be kind of overwhelming for folks. And so, yeah, I'm curious from your perspective, like how are you seeing this idea of putting out content really enhance someone's job search? And if you are looking for a job, what types of content should you be putting out?
Yeah, great question. I'm currently hiring for looking at a lot of different roles for people across the board. And when people send me resumes when they're hiring out for their team about where they should be looking, the first thing I'm doing is going to their LinkedIn. That's like the number one thing I'm doing. And I'm looking to see what have they talked about? What are their most recent posts that they've been talking about on LinkedIn? Number one. And number two, I'm looking at their connections in LinkedIn. So seeing who in my network are they connected with? Does that help legitimize them with who's connected with them? And do they feel like they're part of this network that they're trying to be hired to be part of at this company? So I'd say those are the two things. You mentioned follower count. Obviously, if they have a follower count of something that's significant, then I really want to know like what are they putting out there on LinkedIn that's causing this follower count happening. So I take a pretty big deep dive into what's going on there. Typically, what I see there in best case scenario is what they're putting out on LinkedIn is something that has a general theme around it into the industry that they want to be in. So they're talking repeatedly about what it takes to be in the profession that they're in and certain thought leadership skills there, really making it about their work, especially in LinkedIn, because that's really what they should be talking about on that platform. And then also having thoughtful reactions and comments and engagement with other people's posts and really feeling like they're part of kind of the broader conversation there. Um, we can go into like the don'ts there in a second, but the second thing I do look at also is if they are really, out there in LinkedIn, then they're probably out there somewhere else too. So they're probably either on Instagram talking about something or they're on X talking about something or YouTube. So I try to see, is this translating into other platforms? And if it is, what are they talking about there? Typically, if they're really like have honed in their skills there, they're trying to bring that to one other platform as well. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of things to be doing right there, right? Like I mentioned this, but really kind of come up with your thesis about what you want people to know that you're an expert in and really talk about that at length and dive in deeply into that area. So, talking about what's relevant in the news that week, something that sparks conversation on LinkedIn, really brings people to know you as somebody that's kind of starting this broader thought leadership and conversation there. Same thing goes on the other platforms as well as, being topical, relevant, and using that as the time to really engage in the community there.
Oh,
What's not helpful though, I don't know if we want to go there yet. Should I go
yeah,
there,
let's do it.
Katie?
Yeah.
Okay. Is talking about just spewing out something that somebody else says for the sake of having your name in the feed and for talking about just being, trying to get those follower numbers up. And then we talked very briefly about AI, but you don't want your content to look like it's just been regurgitated out of AI. So that really goes back to the unique perspective, having your own tone of voice, and really uh, being thoughtful about what you put out there rather than just like quantity over quality.
Yeah, I know for myself, right? Like AI has just become such a helpful tool to like not feel overwhelmed and just like I can like spew a bunch of information and be like, turn this into something. But I sometimes fear that like you can still tell that it is a little bit AI generated. Like I almost have like three versions. I'm like, version one is like me going crazy, just like putting down a lot of thoughts, and I feed it into AI, and then I have to like re-edit it again. So I guess like, yeah, how would you recommend leveraging AI? How can you tell if it has or it hasn't been utilized correctly? Like, what are some of the giveaways? Because I posted a post today, and I even feel like from the format, you probably could tell, but I was just like moving fast, and so I would love for you to critique me and tell me,
Yeah,
would you
I know.
tell?
I'll have to take a look at that
Yeah,
after this and give you some real-time feedback. But I would say obviously we're all using AI and we absolutely should be using AI to make this part of our work life go by faster and like really help us build in this capacity. The biggest thing is that you still want to obviously be your voice. So using it from how you said, like I've got these ideas and I want to help structure my ideas. LinkedIn obviously has a very clear, like you mentioned, format of ways to like help the algorithm and, start with a hook and then give some context and end with a question. Like there's a very obvious one, which is totally fine. And it does help start that conversation on LinkedIn. However, you don't want it to feel like it's just cookie cutter from everything else that you're seeing there. So really going back through it, adding in some of your own personality into that and just making sure that tone of voice feels like it's authentic. And then I would just, make sure you're thinking about that in, like, in all the platforms, but then what I see is kind of the worst thing is I'm seeing AI responses that are happening in chats just to, be relevant in responding to other people's, posts on LinkedIn. I'm seeing a lot of very long AI written responses in return to that. So, if you're gonna respond, keep it quick, keep it thoughtful, but definitely don't use that as a place to voice your own opinion at length about anything, because I think that's a dead giveaway.
makes sense. Yeah, I know. I don't know if this is still true, but for the LinkedIn algorithm, we were taught that like you need to be posting at least once a day, and you need to be commenting on so many people's profile, and like they also just like recently, I feel like changed it too. So like, how do you ensure that you pop up on the feed? Is there anything that to like kind of help optimize for that, or are we all kind of
Yeah.
shooting into the void a little bit here?
You might know more than me on this one just because you are, much better about posting on LinkedIn, but, I typically don't post that often, and when I do, it's very relevant for my career and my network and the things that matter the most. So I have not followed the post every day, that type of thing, but I post when it matters and when I need to get an update out there. And I've noticed that works for me because it really helps educate my, network of what I'm working on, and it helps make it very clear, like, when I post it actually is meaningful. In terms of that staying relevant in the feed, I wouldn't say that that's exposing me to a bunch of new people. It's really just honing in on the people that I interact with in my network and LinkedIn and making sure that those updates get to them. So, to your point, if your goal is to use LinkedIn to expand and get in front of a broader audience, following those tools of posting a regular cadence, of trying to get out there more and commenting, all of those things certainly help. You mentioned it's changing all the time, but just consistently staying involved and posting and, staying authentic is really important.
Cool. And is it important, and I can maybe give some feedback on like what I've
Yeah.
seen for different roles too, but like I guess like you're a marketer. So I like obviously like for a marketing role, we're like, okay, yes, like we want to see your content, your followers, your this, like we want to know how to do marketing. Same thing for sales. Like I feel like sales makes a ton of sense because I'm like, are you someone who's going out and engaging with the right people and like, being able to get leads and convert them and like putting out content that shows you're a salesperson. But do you think it's important for every vertical? Like, should engineers or designers be posting, or is it really just kind of that like go to market where like your goals are measured on your reach and your audience?
Yeah, good question. So, I used to work at a company called Beehive and, working with all of the thought leaders and big creators and everybody to use newsletters as a platform to get those voices out there outside of just social media. And anybody out of all different verticals could be active beehive senders, writers, etc. So if you have a point of view on something, whether you're an engineer, a researcher, anything that you could provide an extra layer of value to your network, it's really important because whatever industry you're in, you want to make sure that you're seen as somebody that is thinking one step ahead about all of whatever industry you're in. You can come, people are looking to you for advice or knowledge or anything. So if that is your goal, whatever industry you're in, you can do that. That doesn't really matter. I think your question though about sales and all of very specifics into like what makes you successful and why should people kind of respect you in those different areas is one building block to get people to actually follow you and what you're about to say. So you can't just come out and be like, "Hey, I've got some thoughts on the industry I'm in," but not really have set yourself up as like a credible person that they should be listening to. Like, why would I care about the salesperson on how to sell if I don't know that they've sold before? So, really setting up the stage and putting out your wins is equally as important while you're also giving this thought leadership. So, I guess back to like the marketing example is um, being able to say, "Hey, I closed this partnership deal," really like using case studies and actual like tangible examples of things that you've done to show that, okay, I've been able to do these things and have made these deals happen. And therefore, you should listen to me when I want to talk about how to get a deal done. So,
Yep. Yeah, that makes
mm,
sense. And I think like, yeah, as a recruiter, we are scanning, right? To see like, are you coming off as an expert? Do you know this stuff? Like what indications? We're also looking for red flags. So like
yeah.
transparently, there's been a decent amount of people who have gotten rejected from their content. So like talk to me. I mean, I can give you a couple examples, but
Yeah, I
like
want to hear from you on the red flags for sure.
yeah, I think because we're so accessible now, what you say can bite you in the butt, right? Like we've
Hmm.
had somebody post something like racist online and like someone found that on
Terrible.
their Instagram. And so like, like we're all so visible. And I think like how you show up just matters so much more. And like there's little things too. Like we were hiring for an in-person role. And I remember a candidate did a whole post like earlier that day of like, I'll never do in-person work. And to me, they were like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, I'm excited for
Oh
it. And
my gosh.
I'm like, literally, like, this, you just posted about this. So, like, I feel like, as a recruiter and as a hiring manager, we're looking for all the signals that show, like, can you do this job really well? Do you know the thing that's going to, like, make you successful? And are you, like, a red flag from a culture perspective? So I would just say, like, be careful in your personal brand. Like, obviously, be authentic, be yourself. The right people will be attracted to you. But, like, everything is now also available, and I have seen some of those things hurt people before too. And I've seen it help way more than hurt, where like we're hiring a product marketer right now and we're looking for somebody with developer tool marketing experience that is creating a whole community within this audience. And like if they're not posting online about how they're attracting developers, or like posting about the community
Hmm.
they're in, or hackathons they're attending, or events, like to us, we're like, are you really actually in this world, or are you just talking the talk? So for me, it's
Right.
like, what's the hard evidence that you want the hiring manager to know about you? And how can you create content that kind of backs it up? So I'd really suggest people go to the job description or talk to a friend at the company and be like, what are the pieces that like really matter for this role? And like, how can I position myself as an actual expert in terms of what the hiring manager would actually care about. Uh,
Yeah. Would you
yeah.
say it's easier for people that just hearing you say that earlier in your career, earlier in people's careers, like we're obviously more established and very specific where we are and what we want to be doing. So choosing a niche and going all in on that makes more sense at this stage in our career. Let's
Yep.
say you're earlier in your career and you're like, I'm not totally sure what my strength is or like what I necessarily want to go all in on, which makes it really difficult, right? To like have a social presence out there and just go all in on one subject when you want to keep yourself available to different types of roles potentially. How would you navigate that?
Yeah. I mean, for me, like, I'm always trying to think, like, what's happening in my week and how can I, like, turn that into content without, like, outing, like, anything that feels too personal.
Yes.
But,
Yep.
like, as I'm just, like, going through my week, I'm like, oh, what were some things that I really noticed, somebody, like, did really well in the interview? What were some things people did poorly? I'm like, oh, a hiring manager asked me, like, do we do this for comp or equity? And so, like, I'm always just scanning for what's happening in my day to day to be like, can I turn this into some kind of social post? And I would say someone
Right.
can do that as well. Like, whatever is happening in your life, in your job, document that. And that's where I think AI can be really helpful. You can be like, hey, these three things happened to me this week. Like, how can I turn this into like something interesting or actionable? Obviously, build off of it. And I think your wins, right? Like, I feel like for junior level hires, we want go getters. We want like
Mhm.
I'm looking for keywords when I'm sourcing for junior level people. So I'm looking for like someone attending hackathons, somebody who was a president in their college, somebody who is, like starting a club on the side. Like, I just want that go getter persona. And so, from a keyword perspective, anything that kind of indicates that you are an all star, for better word,
Mhm.
that's the kind of content I would be looking for, because then when I'm doing a Boolean search, you'll come up. You'll be like, oh,
Right.
this person posted that they hosted a hackathon last week in San Francisco and they graduated from Berkeley. They seem like they're an all star.
Yes. Cool.
Um, so, yeah,
No,
I
that's
don't know
good.
if that
No,
helps.
that's super helpful because most people that I interact with have, which is amazing about what Bedford's, pulling together now is for all these different industries to be able to say, okay, I've chosen my industry and like, how can I then use social media and content to make myself an expert out and build up my network that way. And so being able to get to that point and learn what is it that I want to sell online and like, how do I get myself out there a little bit more is a big step to even get to that point, right? So I like your idea of saying it doesn't have to be such a pointed thing at the beginning while you're trying to figure it out. Just show that any company would want you to hire you for these specific areas.
Totally. Yeah. 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 I guess like from that point of like, okay, we all feel overwhelmed. We're doing like 10 jobs at once now, especially with AI, and like the expectations are just really, really high. So, like, yeah, what are your thoughts on like if you are really intimidated, where do you start or how do you start? And like what feels like the lowest hanging fruit to just like put something out there?
Yeah, I see a lot of people uh when their company they work for or a project they worked on was announced, right? So maybe they're advising a company or consulting a company or a deal was done that they're part of, like we've been talking about. I know we've been talking a lot about kind of proof points and case studies, but being able to attach themselves to something and explain, this is something that happened in the industry. You might have seen it. I played my part by doing this, and like this was my key takeaways from this thing that happened gives a little bit of a launch pad to being able to connect what they're doing versus what's relevant in the industry instead of just coming out and saying, this is something that happened to me today. And, otherwise might kind of feel like a little bit random for them to start there. So being able to attach themselves to things that are going on, have a point of view of that, and then being able to maybe bridge upon starting off with that infrastructure and then being able to kind of build upon that.
Cool. And you mentioned the kind of idea about community and your goals. And I feel like, specifically for job seekers, there's a huge opportunity to find out who the movers and shakers are in their industry or in their space and start building community with them, whether it's like seeing what they're posting about and just starting to like engage with their content. Like, I always recommend, again, it's really overwhelming to apply right now. So my recommendation to folks is like create a hit list of all the companies you want to work at, go on LinkedIn, figure out who the hiring managers are, figure out like who the leaders in the space are, and like start, engaging with their content, seeing what they're posting, like really kind of leverage the world that's already kind of out there, and be able to kind of turn that into just a way to like get involved to start. And then when a role is posted, you're like, the hiring manager's already seen you. They like know your name. They're like, oh, I remember Katy. She like commented on my thing, and then she reposted my post with
Yep.
like really interesting insights. So then now you're in their inbox and you're like, hey, I reposted your thing and I thought like what you said was so valuable. Like, I actually just saw you guys are hiring for this. Like, I'm super interested. Here's why I'm a great fit. I'm sure you're bombarded, but like would love to connect. But I find that like if you're building that community before you really need it, then it becomes a lot easier when you do need to make an ask.
Yes, I love that tip. I mean, be on the other side of that and, seeing all the resumes come in, that's definitely happened without even realizing that the person had been maybe following me because they wanted to work at that company or engaging in my content. What I think even taking a step further is, and this isn't always the case, but if there is a mutual connection or something that shows when you are commenting on that person's content, say, hey, I thought you might want to see this. Maybe it's like a mutual connection just to show that you are kind of in their network from a distance, but also being able to connect the dots a little bit with other people that they know as well. So I'd say that's one tip. And then another, obviously this goes without saying, but when you're commenting, providing like a unique point of view on the content instead of, a quick like, thanks for the read or something that maybe will be more memorable.
Yeah, so fair. And yeah, I get bombarded with job seekers reaching out to me that's just like, "Can you help?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
"What?" Right? Like
Yeah.
I would say like making, again, create the relationship ahead of time if you can, because like people like me are more likely to respond to someone that like you've already built rapport with, they've been a part of your career. But if you are going to also like do the outreach, do it in a way that like makes it really easy for your end user, just because I find often you're putting the onus on the hiring manager or the recruiter, and then we get overwhelmed and don't want to engage at all with it. So
Yes,
that's less on content, more in like reaching out to folks. But it can be really overwhelming when you're getting bombarded by a lot of people.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you say, I guess we've been talking a lot about, LinkedIn and stuff, but how do you look at other platforms too when you're doing any of the searches?
Well, to be so honest, I feel a little overwhelmed. Like I feel
Yeah.
like, okay, I've kind of built a presence on LinkedIn and I've started there, and it's mostly for work. And I think back to your like why question, sometimes I like have to ask myself like, is building a presence on Instagram and TikTok and these other channels more for my ego than it is for my business? Because truthfully, I'm a recruiting agency. So
Mhm.
companies, candidates are mostly on LinkedIn. So I go back and forth, honestly. I'm like, oh my God, HigherPeople needs to build a whole TikTok audience for job seekers and on Instagram. And then just being like, no, the people that like actually engage with my content are like the people who are going to help me in my career hang out on LinkedIn. Let me just like focus on getting really good at that. But I don't know if that's right. So you tell me.
No, I mean, knowing what your company is and where most of your, customers and clients are, that totally makes sense. So I guess at the end of the day, it's looking at who are the type of people you're trying to reach and where are they, and that's typically where you should be spending most of your time. So I kind of a niche example would be I follow a lot of real estate agents in my area on Instagram because they're showing me photos of homes. I'm not in the market, but like when I was, that's the way that I was keeping on top of, who's getting the best listings and who's seeing what's out there and just getting a good idea of like what other friends follow that person because they probably use that person. So really finding where the right audience is where you should be building that social platform for yourself. So, just depending on the niche, figuring out the core customer and then building deeply in that space is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. And I think like for me, the other channels kind of feel like my personal place of like
Yeah.
posting like, like updates to my community and my network. So like I love Instagram stories. I'm like always on there. But like my account is private. Like again, I've gone back and forth on like, should I create like Katy on Instagram versus HigherPeople? Because we know that like a person's brand, I think typically does that.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm like, yeah, do I need like an Instagram persona for Katy, the founder, versus like my personal persona, or or do I just take everything personal and like make it public and
Right.
we're all out there? Like, I
Right.
don't. It's
That one's tricky because you want to make sure you're not exposing your personal life too much on
right.
social media. But if you do the research and you figure out that there are a lot of other people you guys could be capturing over there, I could see you doing more thought leadership potentially on Instagram and talking. There's people that are on there that want to learn too about how to nail an interview and all of that. They're not just sitting on LinkedIn too. So I could
Yep.
see that being an opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's put out some content together, Catherine. Like,
Exactly.
yeah. So yeah, I guess like to kind of think about closing thoughts here, like I know a lot of our audience is like very much in the hunt for finding a job and they're feeling overwhelmed. It can feel like there's just a lot of noise. It's going nowhere. Like hot tips, any other kind of last takeaways from a like how do you actually get seen and how do you like get past the I applied and get to the interview part of the process?
Yes. So on the first part, just on the content creation, if you're uncomfortable about it but you really want to make sure you're getting your work out there and people understand like, what makes you valuable to these companies, just getting out there and posting at least once a week to start. And then you'll start to see like, is this something that's has traction? Uh, I love Katie, your example of just talking about what you did that week. So you don't feel like it has to be necessarily a big win where you're posting about stuff too. So I could take that advice too, but definitely a good place to start in terms of just getting your name out there and getting people to engage with it. And then I would say getting from application to interview. I loved your examples of being able to say, I've commented on your content before and I'm part of this connection, and really using any sort of network connection to your advantage in that capacity to try to get that first conversation as well is super important. And in that time frame, like using content to your advantage and saying, hey, I saw this in the news about this company, the ones that you're really eyeing and going after. So just really being relevant and continuing to comment and post in that space will get you hopefully that first initial call, and being able just to prove yourself once you get into that call about why you're the perfect fit for that job.
I love it. Yeah, today we have a candidate that's going to offer, and we partner with A16Z, and they were like, "Oh, it's a really good sign. I have a lot of connections with this person." Like, and
Yeah.
those, it's just those small, they're like, they don't make or break, but they're the small things that put someone over the edge where you're like, "Oh, you're connected to Catherine. Catherine's a rock star." That it's almost like if you're in the cool crowd, then everyone's like, "Oh, you're in the right crowd. Okay, you must be trustworthy." So there's like a trustworthiness piece, I think, too, in terms of like, are you putting stuff out? Do you actually have followers? Like, I've had several clients say they don't have a picture, they don't have any followers. Like, are they a bot? Like, some of
Right.
it's, are you a real person, and are you like in the right world, in the tech world? And so yeah, I love your kind of 3 points. I think those are so key. And I think like, yeah, just kind of figuring out kind of what you want to put out, and like, yeah, not what you want to be an expert in, but like starting to brainstorm in terms of like, what is my unique position that I can kind of offer the world,
Yes.
and how do I just kind of build off that for a minute? Because I know for me, I'm like, should I post personal stuff? Should I post job seeker stuff? Should I post hiring manager stuff? So like, pick one topic, spend a little time on that one topic, gauge engagement. I would say, like, I've seen that like pictures do really well. Actually, like more personal content for me on LinkedIn does better, which
Hmm.
is funny. And so like, it's all trial and error. Like, I've had a bunch of things flop, and
Yeah.
so I think it's just like starting and testing and seeing what works.
Yeah, you mentioned the A16Z thing, and one thing we had chatted about earlier before this was how all these founders and either early stage founders, later stage founders are really trying to think about their content strategy, and employees and everybody is just all trying to be more active on social just to come up with that expertise and just be seen and help really market their own companies that they're building. So that's makes this, space even more crowded, I would say, in terms of people that already have these companies are starting to use content in the same way. So just seeing that is maybe another indication that even more so to get out there and say something, because even those people that have landed their dream jobs are still, thinking about their content strategy. So just everyone's thinking about it. So don't be as intimidated because everyone's trying to do it is kind of the takeaway too. So um, it's wild that that's just where we all are, and everyone should be just a little more comfortable getting out there.
Yep, I love it. I love it. Cool. Well, I don't know if we have any questions, but we can kind of segue into a Q&A and see if anyone on the line has a specific question for us. Love it. And I will go take a look at that, because clearly I need to figure out my personal versus private.
Yes. Thanks for sending that through. It does seem like, personal versus private is obviously a bigger conversation. So we'll definitely take a look at that. And then Erin says that she's really bad at posting, but I highly relate with that. You just have to start doing it more.
Yeah, I'll get in such a kick and I'll be like going, 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 and then I'll have a dry spell and I'll be overwhelmed. It's like when I'm doing it regularly, it's just easy. It's like I see content everywhere, and when I stop doing it, I don't see content at all. And so I do think it's just like getting in a routine, and you using your phone to like draft something quickly throw it in a chat GPT and then figure
Yes,
out how to make it better again.
exactly.
Cool. Well, I don't know if we have any questions, so we can go ahead and start wrapping up. Unless, is there anything else on your end, Catherine, that feels relevant?
No, this is a great conversation. It's good also be on both sides of this, and I think for both of us to see how we're looking at people when they're out there, and for people to understand what we're looking for. Your comment on the connections thing is such a telltale sign for me. So, especially because I do work in partnerships and marketing and all of that, like you want to see somebody that's really well connected and respected, and both those things can come through with all the stuff we talked about today.
Yep, totally agree. Well, yeah, and again, as a reminder, we're doing a ton of stuff for job seekers. I know it's overwhelming. It is hard out there. So don't feel like you're alone. We do a job seeker roundtable and a bunch of other kind of free activities just to try to help folks. But you are not crazy. The job market is hard right now, which is why creating content and just kind of finding ways to stand out, whatever that means, is hugely, hugely advantageous right now, just because it's a large stack of resumes in an ATS system. It's very
No
overwhelming for us
kidding.
on the other
I
end.
know. And I think Paul from Bedford put some information in the comments, but please take a look at Bedford, learnbedford.com. The next cohort for professionals that want to learn how to use content to get hired and help with their job expertise is July 20th. So definitely take a look. And they also have scholarship support available if needed, but take a look at learnbedford.com.
Cool. Awesome.
Awesome. Great chatting with you today, Katie.
Good to talk to you too, Catherine. Talk to you soon.
Alrighty. Okay,
Bye.
sounds good.